Welcome back to our Steven. I only just now finished Stranger Things, and today, from an early 2000s radio contest that got out of control to someone stealing electricity from their employer, we've got some great malicious compliance stories, all starting with a post titled, "Ask us to do you a favor and then complain? We can work to rule." I, female 33, used to work for a company that, among other things, made a particular product that was sold in reasonable quantities to a number of customers. These products were quite large and expensive, but had a relatively short service life, so there was a predictable trend to when customers would order replacements. Let's call the customers in this anecdote Lombard and Orange. The products for each company were slightly different, so we had to change some tooling and machining processes when swapping between the two. Furthermore, as part of the manufacturing process, we painted the products. Oranges were, unsurprisingly, orange, but Lombard requested we left the products unpainted. This was due to some form of copyright issue with their paint swatch, but it wasn't a big deal as they were happy to paint the products themselves. Lombard was a larger company than Orange, and their orders used to outweigh Orange nearly 2 to 1. The product lifecycle was well established at this point, so we knew roughly when orders would be placed and could tailor manufacturing to suit. We had a minor issue when Lombard placed an order on behalf of a subsidiary company they were starting up. It wasn't anybody's fault in particular, but the subsidiary company wanted products painted yellow. Whereas the first few batches we completed were accidentally left unpainted, assuming it was a Lombard order. Because of the way the products were made, we didn't have the ability to paint them once fully assembled, so we just left them in storage, preempting another Lombard order, and remade the products for Lombard Jr. No problems. Orange got in touch one day and said they had an issue where they had gotten their paperwork wrong or something and urgently needed a smaller batch of products as soon as possible. Our contracted lead time for the product was 12 weeks. However, because the contracts were so mature, we could generally get that down to about 4 weeks, as we would start manufacturing ahead of an official order being placed. This particular issue with Orange came up whilst we were in the middle of manufacturing components for Lombard, so we didn't have an easy way to stop production and switch to the Orange tooling. We gave Orange two options. Option 1 was to pay a 33% premium and we would start manufacturing straight away, which would technically take 12 weeks, but realistically would be about 6 weeks. Option 2 was to take from the unpainted Lombard stock we'd previously made at the normal price, available immediately, but we would also supply the add-on bits at a minimal cost that they would have to swap themselves and then paint if they wanted to. Orange took option 2. No issue so far, we still had a small amount of Lombard stock left, and Orange were happy to sort out the extra work from their side. Everybody wins, right? Well, that's what we all thought. A short while later, our senior management organizes a conference with us. We turn up for this conference, expecting to be congratulated for appeasing a customer in a tricky spot, or at least given some form of acknowledgement for reducing stock. Instead, we were given a dressing down because the seniors from Orange had complained to our management that the last order they received was wrong and wasn't in their colors. They had written as such in their official customer satisfaction reports, which were open across the industry as part of ethical practices. So, any company that wanted to order from us would now be able to see that Orange had received unpainted products in the wrong configuration. To say we were ticked off would be an understatement. The general feeling was quiet, simmering rage. The kind where everybody is absolutely livid and wholly displeased at what should have been a positive outcome. The management listened to the explanation and took notes of the screenshots we shared, of emails agreeing to taking the Lombard order. They sympathized with us and confirmed that we had done nothing wrong, even going as far as to say that they knew this particular process worked well and had therefore left us alone. So they were surprised to hear of an issue. Technically, yes, we were breaking our contract by supplying non-conforming parts, but as this was a rush order, they, our management, appreciated we had done our best to help Orange, even if they threw it back in our faces. It was actually our management's idea for malicious compliance. Going forward, everything ordered by Orange would be 100% to specification, including lead time. They told us to keep doing what we're doing, but instead of sending orders to Orange, send them to our warehouse down the road. They could hang on to them until the 12-week deadline and then deliver them on the last day possible. Once we got back to our facility, we had a surprise meeting from our foreman. Whilst we were at this conference, Lombard's management had gotten in touch with our management to reiterate that they were very happy customers, as reflected by their customer satisfaction reports, and that the team, us, were a pleasure to work with. I assume this was to try and prevent any changes to the process, which was working well for Lombard, but we were very grateful nonetheless. Our management, who hadn't seen the message until they got back themselves, forwarded it to us as well the next day. Anyway, now maliciously compliant, we got back to work. Nice and friendly with Lombard, our regular calls being a pleasant mix of social and business, whereas with Orange, we didn't even bother replying to "How are you?" type questions. Strictly business, strictly professional, no flim-flam. A few weeks go by and Orange places their usual order. Of course, they had told us in the weeks leading up that they would be doing so, but we just said, we'll wait for the official order. This time frame coincided with Lombard letting us know that they wouldn't be ordering for another few months, with their subsidiary following a similar timescale. So we got the Orange order complete sooner than expected and sent to the warehouse 2 weeks into the 12-week lead time. Remember I said we could normally complete orders in about 3 weeks? In week 3, Orange asked when they could expect to receive their order. We told them the lead time was 12 weeks. Of course, says the guy from Orange, but you know that's just what the contract says. When can you actually get those parts to us? 12 weeks from the order date, was the response. Week 4, Orange had gotten back in touch to say that they were getting close to their limit with their original units, so they needed the replacements as soon as possible. Once again, the reply was that the lead time was 12 weeks. Week 5, and Orange was getting desperate. They asked if we could focus all attention on getting their units manufactured, to which our reply was a curt, "Production is scheduled to complete on week 12 as per the contract." A similar conversation occurred in week 6 and twice in week 7. Week 8, and Orange had said their original units were expiring this week, so if we could not deliver this week, then they would be taking their equipment out of service as they don't work without this particular product. There was more than a little glee in my fingers when I replied, "Production is on track to complete in week 12. We are confident in meeting our contracted delivery date." The subsequent weeks go by with more chasers from Orange, with the lorry finally delivering the components to Orange at 4:56 p.m. on the day of the 12-week deadline. One of the factory guys who had a commercial driving license had volunteered to drive the lorry and was happily sending us WhatsApp images of him sat at a cafe near the Orange facility an hour before we had planned to finish the delivery. The following week, I made aware of another meeting with our senior management. Unsurprisingly, Orange have complained, so the management want to get copies of all of our paperwork to show that we've adhered to our contract. The management also let me know that Orange had ended up taking one of their largest products out of service for 3 weeks, which would have cost them an easy 6 figures in lost revenue. I wasn't present at the seniors meeting, but apparently Orange was preparing to go to the press, but deflated immediately and visibly when our management passed a copy of the contract under their nose with the pertinent points highlighted. A 12-week lead time was agreed contractually, the product had been delivered within that 12 weeks, so any and all issues were nothing to do with our company, as we had performed 100% to our agreed deliverables. Our management also noted that one of our legal team was present to take notes should any defamatory statements be made to the media. Orange had no angle where they could make us look like we had failed, and our management reiterated that after the issues surrounding the rush order and subsequent public complaint, this is how we would be conducting business in the future. On a side note, after the meeting, one of the Orange team studied the paperwork we had given them a copy of, which included inspection reports for the units. He was quite upset when he noticed that they were dated 10 weeks prior to delivery. So realistically, they could have had them in week 2. This was raised off the record in one of our weekly meetings without senior management, to which we smiled and reminded Orange of the 12-week lead time. I worked at that company for nearly another 2 years. It became standard practice to send Orange units to our warehouse, where they would then be delivered in the 12th week. Lombard and their subsidiary continued to receive their units as fast as we could make them. When I left, this was still the case. Orange had continued to order 12 weeks in advance, which soon became the norm. Customer satisfaction scores remained average for Orange, but with Lombard Jr. now established and ordering enough to qualify for public customer satisfaction scores, their glowing review easily offset the average one from Orange. I'm so brain rotted. Anybody else remember that meme that was pretty popular like a year ago about the guy working on the conveyor belt and random things are coming through and they go, "Guess we're doing circles now"? That was kind of like the only thing stuck in my mind while I was reading this story, was that little stick figure-y guy at the conveyor belt going, "Guess we're doing oranges now." A user named M. Jerix left a comment saying, "Perfect. Would your company have ever gone back to the old way had you received an appropriate apology?" The OP responded, "Thanks. More than likely we would have, as it didn't serve any good purpose, aside from annoying Orange, to leave the built stock sat in the warehouse and gathering dust." Another user named Crystal Lelm left a comment saying, "The way this escalated from doing them a favor to full work to rule is perfect. Some people really don't understand that complaining about free help is the fastest way to lose it entirely. How did management react when the production slowed down?" The OP responded, "Prior to the incident, they very much left us alone. Targets were being met, production was solid, profits were reliable. Aside from the odd factory tour or health and safety incident, they were happy to let us work, and we were happy to have the autonomy." After they had told us to stick to the terms of the contract, nothing much really changed. Our planning and logistics team were good at balancing the facility's load capacity, so when we had foreseeable gaps in manufacturing these units, we would work on other projects, usually helping whichever team was falling behind. There's more to it, of course, but that's the easiest way I can summarize. And speaking of production being solid, if you want to help me maintain solid production of malicious compliance videos, the best way to do so would be to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. Our next story is early 2000s radio contest. Whoever sends the most emails wins concert tickets. A local radio station launched a contest to give away tickets to a Britney Spears concert in LA. I had no interest in Britney Spears, but I had friends in LA that I wanted to see. The contest rules: whoever sends the most emails to the DJ at the radio station over the weekend wins. I mean, it was the early days of the internet and things like this happened. Malicious compliance. I wrote a simple program that sent out a bunch of emails per second from my home computer and left it running. I don't remember the exact number of emails per second. To be fair though, I was not trying to be so malicious that I crashed their email server because I wanted my emails to be counted so I could win. I remember from my logs that I sent many millions of emails while the contest was running, so it was probably close to 100 per second. I had a counter running and would include the counter in my email subject line, something like email contest submission number 15,323,726. Fallout, one Sunday afternoon, they announced on the radio that the contest was over early because their email server kept crashing and please stop sending emails. The DJ responded to one of my many emails asking me personally to stop. He told me that he didn't have the tools to delete so many emails and had to request special help from their ISP's IT department, that he got in trouble with his manager and insinuated that I was a mean-spirited person for automating something that was clearly meant to be handcrafted emails and for causing him so much trouble. He also told me I came in second place. Looking back, I should have added a few more zeros to the number of emails I sent per second. Edit, because it wasn't clear to some readers. The guy who won the contest sent way more emails than I did by several orders of magnitude. In his email to me, he said that there were 3 of us who flooded his inbox with millions of emails. They closed the contest early because it was already clear who would win. Anybody else think that even though they ended the contest early, like I know maybe it goes against the rules and honestly there's probably some legality issue to it, but they should have disqualified the people who clearly botted it and gave it to the highest person who sent a reasonably human sounding number of emails. Again, considering this is like a giveaway, I'm sure there's a huge liability problem with that. Kind of similar to how when you have a giveaway, you have to have an option where you can send an actual physical letter in as a single sole entry regardless of what other mechanism you can use to enter. A user named NoPen left a comment saying, "So did they actually send you or disqualify you?" And for the record, I do kind of agree that it was kind of crappy of you to do. Contests like that are clearly intended to be how much you can do, not what can you program a computer to do. Clearly not in the spirit of the thing. VOP responded, "I didn't win the tickets, some other guy won who sent even more emails than I did. As far as my behavior, I followed the contest rules to the letter. I did exactly what they asked for. If anything, I showed restraint by not maxing out my home computer's capabilities. I mean, I still had to play StarCraft and do homework assignments all weekend while my program was running in the background. Edit, you and I see the world very differently. Contests like that are obviously meant to differentiate people who can come up with clever solutions from people who just brute force their way through life." Our next story is accused of stealing/embezzling electricity from employer. For almost 2 decades, I worked security in office buildings, night shift, so I could work on my novel drafts. At work, in between the idle hours, between rounds and other security duties, I wrote on an iPad with a Bluetooth keyboard, and I'd connected their chargers to the electric outlets in my security reception desk. I get a lot of comments on how I shouldn't write at work and that was why I was singled out. These commenters are wrong. They don't understand that my work was guarding an empty office after hours between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. This involved a maximum of 2 hours of actual work, walking rounds, checking if all the key cards had been returned, answering phone calls, leaving 6 hours to pass the time and stay awake. Most of my coworkers filled that time with non-productive activities like watching TV, playing games, filling out crossword puzzles. Others were college students who studied for their exams or wrote on their thesis. And I knew this beforehand, which is why I chose a low-paying job way below my level, specifically because I would have hours to read books and write on my novels. They could only fire me if I fell asleep or didn't follow up on alarms, but not for spending the idle hours writing. I had a manager who had a personal problem with me and tried to get me fired. Since I performed my duties above average, he had to find a way to get me on something else. So one day, I was called to the HQ for a meeting with my manager and a floozy from HR, a young female intern from the Human Resources Department who spent the whole meeting flirting with my idiot manager, who was married to the company's owner's daughter. I was accused of theft, stealing electricity from my laptop. I told them that if they wanted to accuse me, they had to do it properly. I hadn't committed theft. I had committed embezzlement, since the electricity was part of my reception area and under my supervision. Therefore, embezzlement is a vastly more insidious crime, and they should send me home and gather the disciplinary committee to judge whether I should be fired for this crime, and I would confer with my union rep. They immediately retracted their accusation and stopped bothering me with their nonsense. All my colleagues charged their devices from company outlets, so their accusation would mean every employee could be arrested for electricity embezzlement. Then the irate manager hung up a sign in the security area that nobody was allowed to charge their personal devices. So I took a typewriter to work, so I didn't need to charge my writing implements. Also, I had a Nokia that would hold a charge for several days, but my coworkers had smartphones that needed juice, so they got angry at management for signs about not being allowed to charge their phones, and that complaint spread to other locations, forcing the management to remove the signs and allow people to charge their phones again. And I could hook up my iPad and Bluetooth keyboard again. Addendum: the stealing electricity was just a rage-bait excuse to provoke me into getting into an emotional outburst to my manager so he could fire me for insubordination. Instead, my response made him escalate to posting signs about the petty electricity rule that angered my coworkers with management. Commenting on the cost of electricity misses the point. It was never about the theft of electricity. The accusation was intentionally ridiculous to provoke a quarrel. Also, in the Netherlands, the novel that I write is my intellectual property, and there's no legal clause in our contracts that the company should get financially compensated for part of the novel having been written under company time. Is it wrong that I think it's crazy that people would even assert to OP, oh, you wrote that book on company time, so they're liable to be owed part of the profits from that book? In general, I've always thought that kind of thing in a contract is already scummy, but maybe it would happen if OP worked for a place that was writing stuff, maybe. But the idea that because you work as a security guard and you have downtime and you use that time to write a book, the company that you're working for during that time is somehow owed part of the book is crazy to me. A user named Brilliant Orange left a comment saying, I would ask them if they also pay for the charge employees use up answering calls on their phones. The OP responded, they were not allowed to call us between 11 at night and 6 in the morning, so I would have my Nokia on airplane mode between those hours, and they often were angry that they couldn't reach me on my phone. I told them that I paid for my phone so I could switch it off whenever I wanted, and they weren't allowed to call me between 11 and 6 anyway. They were quick to throw the book at me, but hated when I threw the book back at them. Another user named Ice Road Trucker left a comment saying, so they had no problem writing your novel on company time? The OP replied, they couldn't make a problem out of it without affecting all of my coworkers who were doing whatever to stay awake during the boring night shifts. Our instructions were to stay awake and alert and respond to alarms according to the rules. How you stayed awake was your own problem. The only way they could interfere was if you were actually doing business, which was competitive with their security business, or put their employer at risk. I mean, one of my male colleagues had an online lingerie shop and they couldn't say anything because it didn't compete with their own business. Our next story is, Caravan Park wants us to close a free campsite? I'm part of the community board in a small town. Our community relies on tourists to keep afloat. These tourists stay at a free bush campsite at the edge of town. Caravanners can stay legally here for a month. The bush campsite is also valuable for the local homeless people in beaten down cars and on foot. We do not move them along as policy and let them stay indefinitely. Our campsite had showers, taps, power outlets, and bins scattered around. The local caravan park took us to court, saying that as a taxpayer-funded entity, we are causing them a loss and causing an uncompetitive advantage. The local caravan park charges $80 for a small patch of grass and is quite small. Our town's economy would suffer if they had it their way, so we just removed the showers and replaced the power outlets for a large solar-powered USB charging station. The caravan park took us to court again and lost this time. Well, that sucks. That's not a fun malicious compliance at all. I mean, they complied and it worked, but now your campsite kind of sucks in comparison. I mean, where am I going to embezzle electricity from now? A user named Turning Top left a comment saying, but removing showers would make it less useful for people. Can they be installed back? The OP replied, not unless the caravan park goes out of business, no. Another user named Unseen Tardigrade left a comment saying, did the caravan park start operating before or after the bush campsite? If after, I don't see how they had any ground to stand on at all. Regardless, I think it's ridiculous though. It would be like if a bookstore sued a public library for costing them business by providing access to books for free. The OP replied, it's termed as competitive neutrality. In some countries like the US, it doesn't apply to government, but over here, it's a free game. Our next story is, not for me. I have a disability and started a new job, and within the first month realized it was too much for me and I couldn't do it without a lot of pain. Very luckily, I found a remote job and gave my notice to my very ambitious micromanager. She insisted I had to give 3 months notice and I had to change my start date with my job, which luckily I was actually able to do. I asked if I could leave any other way, use any holiday accrued, etc., and she refused. I still could not do this job as it was causing me immense pain, so I went on the sick. And because it was local council, it meant I had full sick pay, which ticked her off to no end. And she called me every single day of my notice period, to the point I started emailing her immediately after every call and including her boss into the email. I got full pay for the full 3 months and couldn't be happier in my new job. Well, wherever it is that OP works, it sounds like a really pleasant place. You cannot leave and you cannot go to a new job unless you put 3 months in. As somebody who lives in a place that has at-will employment, I cannot fathom the idea of, no, you cannot leave yet, you have to give us 3 months notice. A user named Me Folly left a comment saying, "Where do you live that can require 3 months notice with less than 1 month in the job?" The OP replied, "UK." Another user named NeitherInvestment95 commented, "She can insist all she wants. At the end of the day, you're leaving the job. You just stop showing up or doing anything. What would she do to you otherwise? Fire you?" The OP replied, "Because my contract said I had to give 3 months notice, I wasn't sure if they could sue me or whatever, as it was a local council I was working for. I did get 3 months full pay. To be honest, she could have been less of a crappy person and just let me go, and it would have saved them 3 months pay plus holiday pay, as I accrued that as I was still employed by them." Our next story is, I'm not allowed to take Ubers unless it's to the main airport? Fine. This happened years ago. In Toronto, there's a small island airport close to downtown and then the full-on Pearson International. Once every 2 weeks or so, I'd have to travel, so I'd usually book my flight through the island airport since it would be cheaper and my office was downtown, so it took literally 15 minutes to get to. If my flight was at 1 p.m., I would leave the office at noon and make it with time to spare. One day, I get my expense request denied for the Uber that took me to the airport because it was close enough to walk, and as per company policy, taxi and Uber is only for Pearson. This was all over $12, which I was doing for months. Okay, fine. Next flight, I booked in Pearson. The ticket was $900 instead of $400. I paid $70 in an Uber to get there instead of $12, and I had to leave work a full 3.5 hours before my flight to make it through check-in, security, etc. to get to my gate in time. Usually, I'd be on some sort of call leading up to my flight, but here, I couldn't do any work at all. Sorry, team, I'm unavailable for the rest of the day because of company policy. Come back, and I'm asked why my expense report was double the usual amount I'd put in. It's because I can't expense a $12 Uber to Billy Bishop Airport, and I'm not gonna walk for 40 minutes in my suit and dress shoes in the middle of January in the snow. 2 months later, it's now cost them $2,000 plus over what I would normally have spent. Some of the flights in that time were over $1,000 versus the $400 at the island airport. Finally, I get an email one day saying that I can take whichever flights I deem best based on my judgment, and that any amount under $700 is auto-approved at the island airport. Now I get to eat a nice meal, and sometimes upgrade myself to premium seats, and still fall within budget. And you know, after that whole fiasco where they almost assumed and tried to pressure OP into walking almost an hour in a suit to the airport to save them money, that OP isn't going to go back to, most convenient, ride in, ride out kind of schedule with that Bishop Airport, Island Airport. Get a nice meal in first, upgrade to first class if it's less than $700. Who cares? As long as you can get away with it, it's not your money, and it comes within budget. An anonymous user commented, "Not only great malicious compliance, but you didn't just get to keep doing it your way, you got some extra budget too. Nice work, OP." The OP responded, "Yep, I'd rack it up as close to $700 as I could from then on. Food, seats, even a new neck pillow, whatever I needed." Our next story is, you want bread? Okay, no one eats dinner then. I, 23-year-old male, have worked for a certain colored crustacean for 1.5 years now. I bounced around between positions until they stuck me as a backup, which, for context, means I finish the par list and make more of anything we run out of. It also makes you the baker. Now, this specific chain was well known for their biscuits. Like, I would say most people just go there for them and not the actual food. So it's pretty common to hear a server yell, "Down bread," on a half-hour schedule. Usually I can keep up with the demand and my par list, but one day our morning prep person dipped and I couldn't come in early due to something personal. So when I got there, it was a mess. No bread, no prepped food, just chaos. I get things under control until the rush comes in. By that point I'm swamped and I can't keep up with the bread because the line needs food constantly made. I was in fact asking for assistance and wasn't given any. I got so behind on bread that our manager on duty comes to the back and tells me, "Whatever you're doing for the line, stop. Make the biscuits and nothing else for the rest of the night." Cue malicious compliance. I tell our line that I can't help them anymore and that they're on their own. I begin cranking out biscuits like a machine while the line struggles to keep up with the orders. It gets so bad that the same managers come back and ask why we have 40+ minute tickets and no food has gone out. They calmly tell him it's because they have me making bread and not getting them the materials they need. The manager asks me why I'm not doing my job, and I explain that I'm only following his orders and only focusing on bread. I think we had like 6 tables leave because their food was taking over an hour to get to them. Food went out cold, made incorrectly, missing components, the works. All because they made me focus on making the biscuits. I got called into our GM's office the next day to explain what happened and why our sales were so bad. I happily explained what the manager told me and walked out scot-free. About a month later, all the backups have a baker, and if a morning prep person cannot come in, the managers are responsible until the backup can arrive. Well, OP might be afraid of naming it, but I'm not. Gotta love the good old Red Lobster. To be fair, those cheddar biscuits are pretty darn good. I think there's a reason why they actually, sell those in the frozen section. But also, if this is indicative of how any number of Red Lobsters run, not a surprise that they had a little bit of like a going out of business scare, although they're still going, from what I understand. A user named CoderJoe1 left a comment saying, "Yep, it all comes down to poor management all the way around." The OP responded, "We can slow down seating when the kitchen gets overrun, but it was just the luck of the draw that one of the 2 nights a week we have a skeleton crew. Cause really, who goes out to dinner on a Monday or Tuesday night? It was really just an unfortunate situation for me. I felt bad for the other managers, but I only answered to one of them, and that was the one who set up the biscuit thing." And speaking of biscuits, if you want to hear another story about biscuits, you're probably out of luck. But if you want to hear some more malicious compliance stories, you can check out that video on the left of the screen right now. Or if you missed my latest video, you can check that out on the right of the screen right now. But with that being said, I'll take a look for some more biscuit stories for you, don't worry. And I'll see you all next time with some more stories.